going. Okay, that's us there. Thank you very much for taking part, Richard. If you'd just like to introduce yourself and your current role and what you guys kind of do with the Tree Time project.
Yep, so my name's Richard Darke. I'm the fundraising communications manager for Edinburgh and Lothian Green Space Trust. Tree Time Initiative is one of our sort of projects and initiatives that we've been working on for a while.
Okay, good stuff. And so how did the Tree Time project come to be? What was the process of founding the project, and what kind of spurred it on?
Yeah, so Tree Time came about in partnership with the City of Edinburgh Council and the Woodland Trust. And we've been working with trying to basically have a tree replacement program. The main sort of focus for our sort of development is primarily sort of street trees and urban trees. So they could quite often be the most complicated to kind of replace. Now, when we first launched it, budgets were very tight. There wasn't any money for kind of this whole replanting tree program. They realized that quite often trees had been removed and they basically hadn't been replaced. So we felt that how can we try and encourage people in the public and businesses as well to try and support the whole idea of replacing trees that have been lost.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point that you touched on there. It's not just about planting. It's kind of nurturing them, and then trees that for whatever reason have been lost need to be replaced and rectified. So the next question I have for you is, what was your biggest challenge in setting up the Tree Time project?
One of our biggest challenges with setting up the Tree Time project was obviously kind of agreeing we've got different packages and products that people would be available. And we weren't really too sure what sort of things people would really value, what would they be interested in supporting. So we sort of developed a sort of a generic sort of way that people could support for different values. So it sort of starts as as £20, where you kind of generate like a certificate, and people might give that as gifts, all the way through to what we do is we've actually got you can adopt an existing tree. So we had to sort of plot various different trees across it started in Edinburgh. And then obviously we then thought people would also like to plant trees as well, possibly in memory of someone. So we felt that we kind of had to work out what were the different places that we could do, and what sort of values would people be as a suggested donation. What sort of values people would be, what do they value? And different trees have got different locations. So we quite often will say that there's a uniqueness to it. So if you've got a example in Edinburgh, we've got Princess Street Gardens. You've got maybe quite a unique. There's only one type of tree in there, quite a rare tree. We would feel that that would be kind of quite a high value. So wanted to put a high value on that. But if it was, say, like in the Meadows, which is quite a big park, where there's lots of very similar type trees like sycamore, which is very popular in Edinburgh, we felt like the uniqueness was maybe less for that one. So that was always something that was quite a challenge to try and work out how much people would value those trees. Yeah, so that'd probably be the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and I think as well, from the things you touched on there, it seems like you give them a lot of optionality as well. So you're kind of catering to people's different needs and desires when it comes to plant trees and supporting the local community, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Tree Time operates on a very localized level. What are the pros and cons of this approach, would you say?
We feel that people have got quite passionate about trees. We feel that people have maybe got a particular memory. We found, so for instance, if people are used to be playing in their local parks, or and there's a particular tree that they really liked and they've memories of that, we feel that that's quite important for the local community to have more of a connection to those trees, which are a huge staple part of Edinburgh. I mean, Edinburgh's got lots of trees, and quite often people will could be the first time they met, or the first sort of incident, or quite often it could be something that kids climbing trees or whatever, but people have that local connection. And if it's something that would be sort of you know, random trees in places that aren't people connected to it. I just don't think people would have that same support.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I never thought of it like that, but yeah, if your child maybe climbing the tree or you meet your partner sitting by a bench near a tree, it's obviously going to have a lot of nostalgia and connection. That's a really interesting way of approaching it. What would you say is the biggest threat facing Edinburgh and the surrounding areas from a sustainability perspective, and how can planting trees mitigate these threats?
I mean, being in an urban area that Edinburgh is, you know, there's various different challenges regarding climate change that Edinburgh face. So, for instance, you know, management, you know, you've got a lot of flooding in various different areas. We feel that tree planting can obviously help mitigate some of that. We've also got areas, especially in like streets, where you know there could be a bit of pollution. You know, because it will take in carbon dioxide and obviously release oxygen, it provides benefit for that as well. We've also, you know, you've seen in cities that with heating, you know, so there's actually heating systems, whereas actually the trees can provide quite a lot of shade for both sort of properties and also on the pavements and the streets themselves, because heat, you know, during the summertime can be a bit of an issue as well. So actually, we feel that trees, and especially urban trees, sort of street trees, is very important to try and help mitigate against some of those climate changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. How would you say Alba has contributed towards the Tree Time project?
Well, it's been great working with Alba because they're a local supplier relatively close to Edinburgh. When we're actually needing to get trees, and sometimes it can be, you know, we get maybe a donation in quite quickly, and so if they're wanting to try and get it planted within quite a quick local time, then obviously getting a local supplier that could come in and actually bring trees to us so we can get them planted within a sort of a tree planting season, it's really beneficial to us. And I think also you know, the donors, if they know that their trees are coming from a local source, they're more likely to support that as well. And also local authorities are always keen to have a preferred, you know, a well-established nursery that they sort of providence, so they know where the trees are coming from, so when they're being put in, that's something that, you know, that everybody's quite keen to have that sort of local.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously Alba's been around since 1988, so I think the name carries weight. And again, like you've said, when you're dealing with local authorities and that sort of thing, they want a sort of local supplier that they can, you know, depend on and trust, etc. With Tree Time, has there been a particular project that's been your favorite or any kind of projects that stand out in your mind?
Yeah, well, I remember we were working, especially trying to street trees. There was an area that had a street that had quite a lot of, used to have quite a lot of trees, and a lot of them had been removed. So we worked with the local community in a place called Lutton Place, which is just sort of in sort of the Newington part of Edinburgh. And we actually helped them, you know, to try and secure some funding, and we were able to use Tree Time as a match funding. So because of that, we were able to put in six new street trees into existing pits. So we, you know, took out the old stumps and things like that, and it made such a huge difference to the street. You know, the local residents were so annoyed just seeing these stumps kind of lying, you know, in the street, becoming trip hazards, and you know, it just really wasn't very. So it's been something that's been bothering them for quite a while. So it was great to be able to work in partnership with that local community council and get some funding and then put tree time into that. And they've been great. They were really even watering trees and things like that. So they're like very much like a local community spirit behind those sort of street trees. And they're, you know, greatly appreciated. So we felt that was one of the good projects, you know, working in collaboration with local communities.
Yeah, and as we touched on, the trees can have, you know, nostalgic or some other kind of connection, and you touched on community spirit there with the tree project, so that's really good to hear. Have you had much support from the UK/Scottish government? Obviously, you work closely with local authorities, but have you had much support or encouragement from higher up, I should say?
I mean, we know that the Scottish government are very keen kind of to have tree planting, but so that maybe helps because it will filter down to local authorities because the policy is that they need to do something. But we've never actually had any sort of direct funding, particularly for the tree planting. I mean, the one we did get a little bit for that one I described in Blotton Place, where it was Scotland's local, so they got some funding through that, which I believe is the Scottish government kind of initiative. So there was a bit of funding for that one, but it would be great if there would be a bit more of those sort of local pots of funding that local communities can kind of try and get into to help tree planting and street trees, and then through tree time we could kind of match that, but also kind of we could do a lot more with it, and so we could kind of get more trees planted again in sort of in partnership with local communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, as we've kind of touched on earlier in the questions, I think, that community piece is really important. That's where you're going to make the most impact and probably get the best results. Can you highlight some of the positive feedback Tree Time has received and perhaps areas you can improve upon?
Yeah, I mean, it's been great getting some really nice feedback from a lot of people. Quite often, people are quite often there could be more memorial trees that we're planting, and so they're really grateful that they feel that they can have this tree and they can, some place that they can go to. I mean, we have a plaque on that, with the tree as well. So it's feel that they're really greatly appreciated that they feel like there's something that the families and things like that can kind of go along and then they can meet and they can reminisce about, and have that growing memorial to them. So we've had some really sort of quite heart breaking kind of stories, but people have been really appreciative and think it's a wonderful idea. So it's obviously been, it's great to have that support.
Yeah, definitely. And just my last question for you here. How's it going with businesses supporting Tree Time through sponsorship of tree planting?
Yeah, we have had a few people a few businesses that are keen to kind of support that. So we've developed a slightly different range of packages for that. Because sometimes the businesses are quite keen to have staff involved with like planting the trees. So a lot of the trees that we do with Tree Time are mainly tree standards. So they're large trees that have to be in a street or a parkland. It's very difficult. You couldn't put just a very small sapling in there; it just wouldn't survive. But so we've kind of developed a slightly different packages for businesses, so they could have a couple of larger trees or medium-sized trees, but also like maybe there'd be like 30 tree saplings that actually some of their staff can come along and actually help plant as well. Again, that would be just sort of replacing some trees in parks and bits of woodland that would be needed replacing. And they have got an opportunity to kind of obviously acknowledge that quite often through the community benefits, which is quite often the way that a lot of when they're applying for bids for large contracts for various different things, especially local authority or public sort of public contracts, then quite often they have to have an element of community benefit in there. So we were able to offer a package that would be able that they could then just use and donate to, and then they would be able to develop that, provide that community benefit, which trees I think adds quite a lot of community benefits for various different elements. So that's certainly a way that we've seen support from them, and we've had a few businesses that have made donations to that, and they've got their CSR or ESG, environment and social governance sort of responsibilities, and having an option that's local, especially to a lot of businesses in Edinburgh, that they can actually support. I think they have found that useful.
Yeah, and again, I think the overarching theme in this conversation has been community, and I think it's really the stuff Tree Time's doing, the way they're doing it is really, really impactful for local communities. And again, I think that's where people get the most value out of the trees as well, as well as the environmental benefits and all that stuff. But no, I really appreciate you giving us your time today, Richard. Is there anything you'd like to add or anything you want to say? Just
Well, going forward, we are quite keen because we've actually launched it in East Lothian as well now, and also West Lothian. So they've been seeing the benefit. So we've run a slightly different. It's got a slightly different page. So we've modified the website, We're also obviously quite keen to kind of go into Mid Lothian as well, because it'd be nice to be able to cover that whole Edinburgh and the Lothians region. We've also found that there's been quite a lot of support because of the tree time, especially in Edinburgh, is part of the Million Tree City, where there's about 700,000 trees, and there's a plan, an initiative to try and get to 1 million trees by 2030. So we feel that actually, it is collective, by various different ways of tree planting to be able to get to that. And I think that's quite unique within the UK, that there's that ambition. So it's great to be part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure that they'll reach that 1 million goal. And again, like you say, it's a collaborative effort, and especially as you expand out into Midlothian and stuff, I'm sure it'll be very possible.
Yeah. So it's all on our website. It's which is www.tree-time.com. So if anyone wants to kind of go and see the different, packages and different places that people can actually support, that's the place to kind of go to.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have a wee link for that as well. Thank you very much for your time,
That's
Richard.
all right.
Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks.